Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got one of the friends of the show in Orogen Royalties, one of the picks that I've made, and I'm really positive about what the company has going. I think they've got a interesting business model that sets them apart from their peers. And they had some great news out yesterday that I wanted to talk to Patty about. So thank you very much for joining us, Patty.
Thanks for having me on.
So the business model, Patty, a lot of the royalty companies talk about generating their own royalties. It's a little harder to do than promoted, but you guys have done that at the Ermitaño project in Sonora with First Majestic. Got a 2% royalty on that Ermitaño mine that seems to be one of the best performers of the mines that First Majestic has.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got this coming out of well, I won't say left field, but definitely coming on the scene really rapidly is this Silicon project that has both the Silicon deposit and the Merlin that you have Anglo working their butts off on.
Yeah, no, that's I guess a good segue into everything else. Thanks. Yes, the roots of the company are based in prospect generation, and we've used that business model as a key tool to generate exploration opportunities for industry partners. We partner with private cos, junior cos, senior producing companies in both the precious metal and base metal space in Western North America. And we have 11 such active relationships that are ongoing right now. And as you rightly pointed out, some of the fruits of our efforts have turned into discoveries, Ermitaño being the first one, which is in Mexico and now under production and gives us approximately $1 million Canadian per quarter. And then on top of that, following that, obviously it's the Silicon project, which created some great news since last Friday. AngloGold Ashanti is our partner, or was our partner under the option agreement. Now we're a royalty holder on the project. They have been working there since 2017. This is in the Walker Lane area in Beatty district, for those who might know about it. But in February of this year, they announced a 4.2 million ounce resource on what they call the Central Silicon portion of the project. It's approximately 90 square kilometers of royalty area of influence that we have, our area of interest. And then there's a target that was to the south, which is also in our royalty AOA, called Merlin. And there has been very little information that was disclosed by AngloGold up until recently. And on Friday, they announced what they call an exploration target. It's not, caution everybody, this is not a drill inferred or an indicated resource yet. They are working towards that, but the sheer scale of the deposit has not allowed them to get to that point yet. So on Friday, they announced, along with their Q2 earnings report, they announced a 6 to 8 million ounce gold target, pardon me, at Merlin. So that is in addition to the 4.2 million ounces that has been announced at the Central Silicon zone. That is a tonnage from about 230 to 250 million tons, grading 0.8 to 1 gram per ton gold. So it's a huge start for Merlin, and the camp is, it's a great add-on to the camp, but it takes a sort of an idea that Orogen's AOY could have approximately 10 to 12 million ounces of gold at this stage on it.
Wow. And when we were preparing to do this interview, we had a good chat yesterday, and a couple of things stood out from me on that, Patty, is that at Merlin, these guys are doing 200-meter line spacing, and just keep stepping out. That's very aggressive exploration.
Yeah, I mean, it's 200-meter spacings on drill collars, and you can see the plan map that AngloGold provided on Friday gives you a sense of the scale of what they've been drilling. And since, as I mentioned, I think it was 2020 they first started to drill off. 2021 they first started to drill off Merlin, and they started the southern boundary of where Merlin is, and they've been moving northward ever since. And so they've moved out about 2 kilometers now on drill step outs, and they're also, so that's towards the north, and then they're also moving out towards the west. And so you can see it's almost like grid drilling. There's a pattern to how they've been drilling. They still have not found the extents of the zone, which is very encouraging for us. It's open to the north, it's open to the west and to the southwest. And so we see tremendous upside to that 6 to 8 million ounces, so beyond what they've announced today.
Sounds like there's a possibility that they could be connected, Silicon and Merlin.
Yes, Merlin and Silicon are very close. They're on I believe, the same structural fault. So they have not, doesn't appear they've connected it yet, but there is every indication that it could be. So there is a very small amount of drilling you can see between the two areas. And so obviously that's Silicon Central is just north of the Merlin zone. So you would think that that's one of the priority areas that they'll try to focus on. But again, they were trying to get to an inferred, resource by midway through this year. And just because of the scale of what they've been drilling, they haven't been able to infill drill. You need to get a certain drill density to get to that inferred resource. So they're going back now. The idea that they've got is that they will have a conceptual study by the end of this year that will integrate the resources that it's at Silicon Central. So the 4.2 million ounces combined with an inferred resource that they're wanting to get to with Merlin. So we'll see that conceptual study towards the end of this year. Our feeling is that based on what we saw Anglo do with the Central Silicon core, they put a high degree of economics to these things. And so we expect it to see a fairly robust study come out towards the end of this year.
And they've got to be one of the most aggressive drilling things going on in Nevada right now. How many meters have they told me?
Well, I think in terms of Merlin itself, they've drilled over 120 kilometers. And that's 261 drill holes, and they're well north of 200 kilometers between the two zones. So they have 8 rigs turning, I think, right now. It's a tremendous amount of work. In conjunction with that, they've got another deposit called the North Bullfrog, which is not in our royalty area of interest. It is to the northwest of Silicon and Merlin, and that was a deposit once held by Corvus. And part of the acquisition, or the reason of the acquisition, was not only there's a deposit there, but there was a head start on a permitting process and private water rights, which in that part of the world is very important. So AngloGold has been pushing forward with that. It's the most advanced of all the other targets within the camp. That's expected to go into production towards 2025. And then you've got all the 2 deposits, both Central Silicon and Merlin. So you can get a sense of the sheer scale of the people that are working on this, not only from a drilling perspective, exploration perspective, but then mine development, the permitting, environmental work. It's a tremendous job, I would think. And, you can appreciate sometimes there's delays in these things because they are trying to find the extent of, the mineralization. I mean, Central Silicon itself is also open at depth. They still haven't found the depth extent of the mineralized zone. So both of these deposits are still open. And, we are excited to see what sort of the scale could become over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and we're not newbies to this area, Patty. You and I used to work with the company that had the project that Corvus vended in, and so you and I have followed this area for, oh gosh, probably close to 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. There was the North Bullfrog was discovered a while back, And yeah, we were part of a company way back in the day. But since then, there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done in the camp. And obviously, Silicon and Merlin, which when you compare it to a lot of the other deposits in the region, is 2 to 3 times the grade that you're seeing at some of the other deposits. And so it has a tremendous amount of economic benefit when you're thinking about all the other satellite deposits in the area. And that's why AngloGold is pushing so hard on pushing this forward to production.
You don't, I don't want to run AngloGold for them, but if I was prioritizing mines, you always want to try and get your money back as quickly as possible, and going after the high grade is usually the way to do that.
Yeah, and they had indicated this is a 300,000 ounce annual producer, the camp as a whole. They've changed that over time, and now they're saying north of 300,000 ounces. And our feeling is it would be closer to 400,000 to 500,000 ounces based on the ounces we're seeing today and just the scale of everything that they're doing. And that's sort of a multi-decade, 2 to 3 decade type of operation. So this is here for the long haul, and you can see that 400,000 ounces a year type thing, if that's what it ultimately becomes or more. I mean, a 1% royalty on just the gold ounces alone, that's a huge benefit for a group like Orogen.
And just to put things into historical context, Nevada for a long time was focused on these oxide open pit mines, and that really was company makers for companies like Barrick and stuff like that. But lately, they've been a lot harder to find those oxide deposits, and a lot of these companies are now going below the oxides and looking in the sulfides. So this finding something of this magnitude in Nevada, it's got to be the envy of other major mining companies that are trying to reproduce the history of the last 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, this is probably one of the bigger discoveries in the past few decades, or past couple of decades at any rate. And it is, as you mentioned, it's a oxide resource that at least they're talking about right now. So a heap leach operation, it's a tier 1 cost profile. So it's got all the benefits of being a low cost producer. There's also what we're hearing is a significant sulfide component, both at Central Silicon and, we're early days yet on Merlin, so we don't quite understand that yet. But there's a few million ounces that we see sitting at the Central Silicon zone that hasn't even been factored into the oxide resource that they've announced back in February. So we would hope that in time those ounces somehow make their way back into a mine plan, whether it's through another mining method or something, we don't know. But we would hope to see that come in the future. So again, it's just this. There's a lot of, it's a district scale camp. Some of the deposits that you see in Nevada are huge, and we see that this has that opportunity to be on that scale too.
And there's the potential that there could be epithermal veins there as well that could carry some very high grades.
Yep, we've seen some drill core and some presentations that was presented by Anglo last year. There's a Central Silicon. There's core that you can see that almost looks like the Ermitaño core down in Mexico. And you're at 625 meters below surface. I don't know the grades, but it sure looked pretty interesting. So you would think that, you can see in the cross section that Anglo has provided, there is a high grade component to the Central Silicon core, and you would think that that's where that drill core is coming from.
So Patty, this news release you put out yesterday, highlights target at Merlin 230 to 250 million tons, grading from 0.8 to 1 gram. For a total 6 to 8 million ounces of gold. You and I have been around the mining business a long time. We know the disclosure. issues, and I guess you guys were allowed to put something like that out there because it's coming from Anglo.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, this is not a 43-101 number. And you have to be careful about what you say, and you have to get, we obviously go out and make sure that we get the permission from market surveillance to disclose what we're disclosing. And we put a good cautionary note in our news release about it. But yes, it's a senior producer. They aren't going to put out fluff because this is, it's important for them too. And so when we see the 6 to 8 million ounces, we've got a pretty good feeling that that's the amount of ounces that'll still be there when they announce the inferred resource later this year. So we feel pretty strongly about it, but it's, it's not a 43-101 yet. So we want to caution everybody on that.
If anything, those kind of companies tend to understate and try to over deliver. They're not in any hurry to go out there and be arm waving promotional juniors. They want to be able to deliver what they're talking about.
Yeah, and credit to them. They've taken a very systematic, I would say, cautious approach in how they presented the Central Silicon area over the past couple of years. There's a lot of project economics on it. There are recoveries. All the things that you would expect in a more advanced study were done at an inferred resource level. So we feel very confident about the Central Silicon core, which Central Silicon deposit, which would, again, lend itself to us thinking that this is going to be a similar experience. I think with just the sheer enormity of what they've got at Merlin, AngloGold felt compelled to tell the public about what they've got, because obviously it adds ounces to their overall, reserves or their inventories, if you will.
Yeah. And that grade, to put that into context, a lot of oxide deposits these days are being mined at 0.5 gram.
Yeah.
You're looking at 8/10 of a gram to 1 gram.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, North Bullfrog, where they're getting started, is around 0.35. So it's significantly less. So this is why this becomes that much more important for them.
And I'm just going to switch over. So is exclusive, and that's not including they talk about 6 to 8 million at Merlin, and that's not including the 3.4. I think that is a resource at Central Silicon, right, Patty?
Yeah. So there's 4.2 million ounces in total at the Central Silicon. 3.4 of that is an indicated resource, so which is a higher degree of confidence than inferred, and there's about 800,000 ounces of inferred. Over the course of 2022, AngloGold did a fair bit of drilling on the Central Silicon area. If you go to their website and look at some of their exploration notes, they indicated there was an addition beyond what they've announced with the 4.2 million ounces. There was another 2.7 million ounces of sulfide material, which aren't included in the pit design that they've got because it's sulfide. And so they've made a statement to the effect that they're trying to evaluate a variety of mining methods and recoveries to bring some of those ounces back into the picture. So again, they're putting a lot of effort into the economics and trying to understand or to see what sort of mining they can do on an economic level. And we hope that in time, those 2.7 million ounces will find their way back in. It's as you mentioned, it's the reversal of what a junior might do. Most juniors will come out and say, we got, they got the world, right? That's the promotional end. You got to do those sorts of things. But for a major, they're doing it systematically, and they're doing it very well.
And there was a couple of holes here that just are quite spectacular.
Yeah.
Grading, one hole graded 3.27 grams per ton gold over 285 meters, and another was 2.61 grams over 214 meters. No wonder they're so excited about this, Patty. Those are orders of magnitude higher than what a lot of mines are mining these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too that there's about 4 or 5 of those types of bigger holes within the whole thing. And what's interesting is those holes, they're not all clustered together. They're all like several hundred meters apart. In fact, you go end to end is probably at least a kilometer plus between, some of those high grade holes. So there's a huge area that you're seeing that has some really good grades in it. So
Well, and you going back to that point about how wide they're spacing in between the holes, you go 50 meters over from each of those big hits, and you could add a lot of ounces of gold.
yeah, exactly. And as I said earlier too, that the deposit is still open. To the west, southwest, to the north. So there's lots of expansion potential there. And we did our own
Expansion
internal.
potential around these high grade hits.
Yeah, yeah.
And are they
So
doing mostly RC, or are they doing core? What are they doing?
they're
Patty?
doing both. They're doing both. I mean, you need core for a certain level of study, right? And so you got to get your core in as well. So they appear to have done a combination of RC and core drilling. I don't know the breakdown.
Breakdown. Okay, and just to add to, by the way, folks, go to originroyalties.com and the news releases yesterday, because there's a lot of great information in there. One of those is you can see a map of the central silicon with the resource, the exploration target at Merlin. Definitely looks like there's something going on at Frying Pan and Maverick, and the potential that this could all be one big super pit, if you will. And there's a model of the mineralization, and you can see the density on one of the figures. I think it's figure 3. You can see the density drilling at Silicon pit shell, and then you can also see, and I think what are those black lines, Patty? Are those faults or roads?
With the plan map?
Yeah.
Or those are roads.
Okay. So you can see that on the Merlin, how wide spaced the drilling is. I mean, you look at that core of silicon pit shell and all the density of drilling there, and then you look at how wide spaced it is at Merlin. My gosh, Patty, if they fill that all in, everybody else can do the arm waving for me, but I think it's going to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, no, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, we're living bit vicariously through them, and so we are excited every time they put some news out on the project.
Well, living vicariously through them is kind of your business model, Patty. You guys have done that through with First Majestic at Ermitaño. Bit of a cash-making machine of a mine there that sends you money regularly. And now it looks like you've got the potential that there's going to be a world-class mine at this Silicon area.
Yeah, it's a business model that's, I think, worked well for us. It's not the easiest one to do because you're trying to think of ideas and you're trying to convince others to invest money into those ideas on a prospect generator level, and seeing the fruits of your labor, come up. And we've got the 2 big ones, obviously, with Silicon and Ermitaño, but there's a lot of little ones in behind there that have the opportunity to do what we've done with Ermitaño and Silicon. And you can look at the Headwater Gold story with Spring Peak in Nevada. You can look at the Axe story. That's run by Kodiak Copper up in British Columbia. We've got opportunities for silicon type targets with Strike Point, with K2 Gold, who have drilled.
We also have a royalty on a project not very far from Ermitaño called Serape that I'm kind of fond of.
There's another one. I mean, Serape is an Ermitaño lookalike, and so you've got those opportunities that are in the pipeline, right? And any one of those can be the one discovery that takes the next big step forward.
Well, recently I always listen to Pierre Lassonde because the guy's a brilliant dude who's been around the business for a long time, and he talks about the brilliance and of having a royalty business. And it remind why I attract so much to that is it kind of reminds me of Berkshire Hathaway, the way that they run the company. They can have a very small company that owns big positions in a lot of other assets and sort of keeps the overhead down and allows them to have their finger in. And that's what Pierre Lassonde was talking so much about. But just knowing the history of Franco-Nevada is pretty important too, because they kind of did the same thing you're doing in their early days at the Midas mine. That sort of, they generated that project and it turned into a phenomenal cash machine. By the way, that's an epithermal vein as well.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah. It's interesting to see where Franco came from, and obviously where they've gotten to. Yeah, I mean it's a lot of work to do what we do here, but I think it's a patient method. It's profitable. I mean, Orogen, we last went to the market to raise money in 2018, and so have not, had to raise money since then. We've got 13 million in the treasury. We make about $1 million a quarter. We are profitable. The prospect generation business, through the deals that it does, supports itself. So yeah, it's a model that it's a safer investment in a fairly high risk environment, but we have a tremendous amount of exposure to the upside.
And you also have another pretty important shareholder on your registry, and Andre Gaumond. I had the fortune of picking his companies a few times, and having Andre on as on several interviews. And Andre is a brilliant guy when it comes to this model.
Yeah, no, he knocked it out of the park back in the day. He sold the company, and then he sold the royalty for even more.
Actually, he sold the company, spun out the company, sold that company, and spun out the royalties and sold that company. And no wonder he's retired now. But Andre, I've had the pleasure. I think of him as a mentor. I just watch his career so closely and how much of a gentleman he is, and how passionate he is about this business of mining exploration. So do you get to pick his brain every once in a while?
I have come across him on occasions. He's a good guy to chat to, and yeah, he's a good person to bounce ideas and thoughts off of. But you're right, he is more in retirement mode these days.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's still, I think, very much a participant in investing, and he's always fascinated with the business. But yeah, I do have a lot of time for Andre. He's a very kind guy and a good gentleman.
Yeah. And so there we go, Patty. I mean, that business model you have is very exciting. And as I started by saying, a lot of royalty companies talk about royalty generation, but you guys have done it, and it's even in your name, Orogen. And so you've got a great team there, a good business model. You've got one royalty paying you cash now, and a world-class project in the making at Silicon.
Yeah, no, we kind of touch all the bases, and it's I think you kind of pointed out, it's the team. It's we've got a really, really good team. There's only 9 of us, so not a huge group, but everybody has bought into the business model, and everybody can see the value that we're creating day in, day out, and it all points towards a greater future. So I'm lucky to have the team that I've got here. So they're all a bunch of really good people.
And you've got a pipeline there of other projects that could turn into your next Ermitaño or your next Silicon.
Yep, 11 joint ventures, 24 royalties. We're going to see 100,000 meters of drilling across the entire spectrum of royalties and joint venture projects this year. as I mentioned, that's any one of those can be the next big one. And so we're trying to make as many opportunities as we can, because this is a numbers game, and any one of those can be the discovery. So it just, the more you do, the greater your chance of having that come to fruition.
But it speaks a lot about the quality of your team in generating projects.
Oh, yeah.
Bring out the partners that you guys have, the amount of drilling that you guys are doing, that, this speaks volumes to the quality of your team and the quality of your assets.
No, absolutely. I mean, when you look at some of the deals we've done over the years, and a lot of it's repeat business, and it's because the way that our team, they manage budgets, they report to our joint venture partner, and just how we communicate with them. And it's all about, I mean, as much as it is about trying to generate a project, it's also about a customer relationship, right? Which isn't always apparent in our business. And our team does that really well. The guys are exceptional at what they do and trying to communicate with our JV partners.
Well, Patty, we've known each other for a long time. I remember the days when we were working together and you were considering building a company. You're one of the good guys in this business and one of the straight shooters. And Patty, I'm really happy to see all the good things that are happening to you.
Thank you. No, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, well, you've got an open invitation to come on the show anytime you like, Patty.
I appreciate that. No, it's been fun. Thanks very much, Allan.
Okay, I'm going to close it off and we'll talk at the other end.
Sure.
So there you go, folks. That's the Orogen Royalties story. And I think that I see a lot of similarities to the early days of some of the success stories. I mean, throwing a name like Franco-Nevada out there, that's a huge name to model yourself after, but that's how Franco started. They started with the Midas mine in Nevada. They found a mine, and it was a very profitable mine, and that generated to them royalty after royalty after royalty. And in the 1990s, it was a very tough time in the business. Patty and I worked together then, so we know how tough those times were. And yet Franco-Nevada was the best performing gold mining stock in the business. And that just speaks to the business model, and also the ability to go out there and find these royalties. And that's what the Orogen Royalties has done now with Ermitaño. And it looks like Silicon is going to be in the not too distant future. And then they've got a whole pipeline of other projects. So, and still a very reasonable valuation. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors about your risk profile and do the homework and go to Orogen Royalties website, check out all their news releases, check out all their properties, because they do a very good job of telling their story. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.